Cell phone videos of ISIS's brutal justice that the world hoped it would never see again. Shared for the first time with CNN, these images weren't captured in Raqqa or Mosul in 2016. They were taken in 2022 in the Al-Hol camp in northern Syria, the sprawling dumping ground for the women and children captured after ISIS was defeated. 5 years after the fall of the caliphate, ISIS's ideology lives on here. Security officials warn it is a ticking time bomb, ungovernable and hostile to the outside world.
You can see just how vast this place is. More than 40,000 people are living here, and the most dangerous part of the camp is called the Annex. That's where some 6,000 foreign nationals are currently living.
We were granted exceptionally rare access to the Annex by the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, who control the camp. The women here hail from more than 60 different countries. Several raise their right index fingers for the cameras, a sign of solidarity with the Islamic State.
Do you regret your decision to join ISIS, or?
Why should I regret?
She complains that the conditions in the camp are awful.
There are people in the world who will say, you went to join ISIS, you deserve it. You deserve it. What do you say to that?
Normally, even with enemies,
Yeah.
Women and children need for multi service.
The majority of Al-Hol's residents are kids who have ended up here through no fault of their own. The UN has called it a blight on the conscience of humanity. It is effectively a prison camp where women and children are arbitrarily and indefinitely detained. A group stops us with a frantic plea. One of their sons has been arrested trying to escape the camp.
She's asking if she can get her son back who's in a prison. He's 10 years old.
We wanted to send him out so the SDF wouldn't take him, she tells us. Once boys turn 12 here, they take them. It is a troubling story we hear over and over again. The SDF says it is their policy to separate adolescent boys because they are being radicalized by their mothers. An SDF raid earlier this year netted this video of a training session for children inside the camp. The SDF claims young teenage boys are married off to repopulate the next generation of ISIS fighters, which they say may explain the roughly 60 births recorded here every month. This is where some of those boys end up after they are taken, the Orkesh Rehabilitation Center. Conditions here are much better than the camps, but there are only 150 beds, and they are all full. Shamil Chakar grew up in Cologne, Germany, until his parents took the family to the ISIS capital, Raqqa. A shrapnel injury to his head has left Shamil confused.
How old are you? كم عمرك? ما بتعرف, you don't know.
Shamil was living in Al-Hol camp with his mother and siblings until a few years ago, when security forces came into their tent in the middle of the night. A man came and pulled me up and tied my hand behind my back. My mom was screaming. She said, "Leave him alone," he tells us. I didn't want to go with them. He pushed me, saying, "Put on your shoes," but I didn't. Then he hit me. Islam is from Dagestan, Russia, and is one of the youngest boys here.
3-4 месяца. И твоя мама в Мухайме, да? So he's saying that he is just 12 years old. He has been here about 3 or 4 months. He was taken from his mother. He doesn't even know what his last name is.
Human rights organizations have said the separations are an appalling violation of international law. But the SDF's top general, Mazloum Abdi, defends the policy.
Instead of these organizations condemning what we are doing and calling it a human rights violation, these organizations should give us help when it comes to our program that we have in place for years now to rehabilitate these children.
But part of the problem seems to be that once these young boys turn 18, there's not anywhere for them to go, particularly if they can't return to their home countries. And so some of them, I believe, are ending up in prison.
This is not a policy that we are following to put them in prison at 18. The reality is the goal is to reintegrate them with society.
But CNN has found that boys as young as 14 have been held here at the notorious Panorama prison. With an estimated 4,000 inmates, it is the largest concentration of ISIS fighters in the world. No journalist has been allowed inside Panorama since 2021 until now.
So the head of the prison has asked me to put on a headscarf while we walk through here because these are some of the most radicalized prisoners they have.
A senior U.S. official told us the #1 concern at Panorama is a prison break, a fear that was realized in 2022 when hundreds of inmates managed to escape.
Can I look inside?
25 men sit cross-legged in silence. The cell is spotless. The men we see appear to be in decent physical condition. But tuberculosis is rampant in the prison, and we are only allowed to look inside 2 cells.
Are you British? You are? Where are you from?
A British man approaches the grate, but does not want to show his face.
I know.
Advocacy groups call the U.S.-funded Panorama a legal black hole, worse than Guantanamo Bay. In an interrogation room, we meet 19-year-old Stefan Uterlu from Suriname. He tells us he was brought to the prison when he was 14, along with more than 100 other minors.
Have you had a lawyer ever? Have you talked to a lawyer?
No. I don't know about the big guys. If you're speaking about the kids, if you want to know the truth, we don't know even why we're always punished. It's 5 years in this prison and we're punished. We don't even know what we've done. We've been in prison because of our parents.
At the SDF intelligence headquarters, we meet British-Pakistani doctor Mohammed Saqib. Accused of joining ISIS, he claims he was the victim of an elaborate kidnapping plot and says Panorama's inmates are abused.
So we live in torture. I live in fear.
When you say you live in torture, do you mean that you are actually physically being tortured?
This happens on and off.
What kind of torture?
Like beating by the stick, by the guards. To be honest, I'm just waiting for my death. There's no getting out of this prison. Probably never.
The warden at Panorama called Saqib's claim of abuse false, saying, quote, all parts of the prison are monitored by cameras and no prison guard can act in this way. The SDF and the U.S. are pushing countries to repatriate their citizens from Syria, saying it is the only solution to this complex and dangerous situation. But the process has been slow, and many, including Western allies, are dragging their feet. In the Al Roj camp, we meet Brits, Canadians, Belgians, Australians, and a couple of Americans. 30-year-old Hoda Mathana has been stuck here with her 7-year-old son for more than 5 years.
I have to ask you, I'm seeing all of the women here are fully covered, a lot of them covering their faces. You're not covered, you're wearing a T-shirt. Is that hard?
It was hard when I first took it, I would say for the first 2-3 years. People were not accepting of it, and they harassed us a lot. They stole our stuff, and I had to stay strong and show example for my son,
Born and raised in the U.S., Hoda became radicalized online at the age of 20 and left her family in Alabama to live under ISIS, a decision she quickly regretted.
If you were to be able to go back to the U.S. and you had to go on trial, potentially serve time in prison, have you reconciled yourself with that possibility?
I always tell myself that going to prison would be a step forward in my life. If I had any time to serve, I'd serve it and I'd come out and begin my life with my son.
For now, that is not an option. While the U.S. advocates repatriation, it ruled Hoda's U.S. citizenship invalid on a technicality.
Not in my ear.
Now she lives in fear for her son's future.
Say it loud.
What do you miss most about America?
I just want to breathe American air and be around people. I love the people of America. They're very open and they're very forgiving and they're people who give second chances. And I think if they were to sit down with me and listen to my story from the beginning, they would give me a second chance.
But second chances are hard to come by here. For most, repentance is demanded and forgiveness rarely given, as the cost of ignoring this ugly crisis continues to mount. Clarissa Ward, CNN, Northern Syria.